We have some handouts for you. I made an offer to Senator Miller. The offer was that we provide $1 billion to the frontline workers, and that would go to 667,000 workers. The payments would be up to $1,500 per worker, depending upon how many workers apply. Our proposal is to use $250 million from the American Rescue Plan dollars, as we agreed to in June of last year, and that the remaining $750 million would come from the state's general fund. The second component of our offer was on unemployment insurance. We moved $700 million in the direction of the Senate. We were at $1.150 billion before this meeting. At this meeting, we offered $1.85 billion for the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. We also offered to change the rates by legislation, which we are entitled to do. So in 2013, Democrats reduced the rates on employers because of the state of the fund, and we would propose to level out the additional assessment and the special assessment for employers in calendar year 2022.
That still doesn't satisfy federal rules that say you have to have surpluses at a certain level, even if you've decided not to assess premiums. How do you get around that?
It does, actually. So the federal government requires that we are above zero to avoid the federal penalty, which is the federal unemployment tax assessment, which would be if the fund in the state of Minnesota is not positive by November 30th of 2022, then there would be a special assessment of FUTA of $21 per employee. But because what the House is proposing and always has been proposing is to repay the entire federal debt plus interest, the House position has always been to avoid any federal penalty or any additional charges on employers related to owing the federal government money.
But I thought they also required surpluses at a formula level, which is why you were at 2.7 before the recession.
No, my understanding is that the federal government does not require that we bring our surplus to the level it was prior to the pandemic.
How would you characterize the response to your offer?
Senator Miller thought he deserved all sorts of credit for getting to the level where he agreed to abide by an earlier agreement, and my hope would be that they'll return tomorrow with a good faith offer in response, and that there would be some movement in our direction. We have moved $700 million in their direction. It is time for the Minnesota Senate to move in the direction of the Minnesota House. We all should be able to work together to provide money for frontline workers.
Is it possible that the reinsurance part could get involved in here with the UI Trust Fund and the frontline worker, or is that a separate issue with the conference committee meeting tonight?
I think we could get all three done this week. I think we could get all three done by tomorrow if there's a good faith willingness to provide give and take on all issues. One of the things that's important is we need the Minnesota Senate to listen to our negotiators in the reinsurance conversation. So for reinsurance, what the state of Minnesota is essentially doing is providing a substantial subsidy to the insurance industry to bring down costs in the individual market. In exchange for that substantial subsidy to health insurers, it's entirely appropriate to ask health insurers to partner with the state of Minnesota to keep costs low for ratepayers on prescription drugs and other benefits. So what we would expect is that the Senate would be able to listen as well as they can talk and to find a true compromise.
Speaker, your $1.4 billion on here, that's to cover the debt, and then $450 million, is that bad?
That's a cushion to make sure that despite what happens with the virus and the ups and downs of this year's economy, that there is really no way the fund would go negative for the remainder of the year.
You said that you plan to meet again tomorrow.
I think there's a hope that we'll meet tomorrow. We have not figured out if we will meet tomorrow, or if we meet tomorrow, what time. Okay, I'm gonna head to the board.
Thank you.
It's been one of those occasions.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As you can see, we just had a meeting with the legislative leaders and the governor. The House Democrats did present an offer. I would say that it was a counterproductive counter-offer that moved us a few steps backwards and still results in a tax increase for businesses across the state of Minnesota at a time when the state of Minnesota has over a $9 billion budget surplus. And this is the exact reason why the unemployment trust fund issue should be separate from frontline workers or any other issue. So as we've argued from the beginning, the refilling the unemployment trust fund should be an issue on its own. Putting money back in the pockets of Minnesotans should be another issue. And while we've agreed to try to do those issues together in an attempt to compromise and meet some of the requests that were out there, today's offer by the Democrats, we feel, moved us a couple steps backwards.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. My first meeting with the leaders, I think, was a week ago, and I was under the impression at the time that everybody was on the same page, that it took $2.7 billion to fully refund or replenish the trust fund to prevent a tax increase. And today we're, with the Democrats' offer, quite a ways away from that. So a little bit disappointing, but hopefully they will get this out of their system and can come back to the table, and we can roll up our sleeves and actually get this done.
So we had obviously a 30-second description of this thing, so hopefully you guys know it a little bit better. It sounds like they would be willing to go into statute and change the statutory requirement for an automatic increase to fill the reserve.
Just in our quick reading of it, it looks like they understand that if we don't put $2.7 billion in, this is going to be a tax increase on Minnesota businesses. And the reality is, in their offer will still result in an increase in taxes to businesses. Exactly how much, we're not sure, but she did admit to us that she understands that her offer will increase those taxes to employers in the state of Minnesota, which is unfortunate.
Rules as far as what the feds require surpluses to be, meaning it was my understanding that they require states to build up a surplus at a formula level, which is why the state was at 1.7 billion before COVID hit, and why you guys want to return it to 1.7. Is that not the federal formula for how much the state of Minnesota must have in its reserve?
Yeah, it is our understanding that the federal government does want you to have some operating revenue in that fund, and obviously, if you think about the importance of the dollars that are in that fund, if for an unforeseen circumstance a Minnesota employee needs to be out of work or is laid off or whatever, and heaven forbid it be a large amount of people, that's what those dollars are for, to protect those workers. So it's pretty important that we have those dollars in the fund. It's my understanding, and it's the understanding of everyone, including the speaker, that if we have less than $2.7 billion in that fund, it will result in a tax increase for employers in the state of Minnesota. Her formula, she does try to adjust things in statute to prevent some of that from happening, but she does tell us that she is, in her offer, increasing the rate, which would increase taxes for employers in the state of Minnesota, which we think is unnecessary. Remember that during COVID, they didn't ask for this. In many cases, it was because of shutdowns by Governor Walz, who shut down businesses in the state of Minnesota. And businesses actually feel like it's his fault. And we appreciate that he sees that, and that he's been on the page with us of wanting to put $2.7 billion back into that fund to hold those employers harmless. And so unfortunately it's the Speaker and Democrats in the House right now that are holding out, and in this case actually holding out for an increase in taxes on those employers.
Not only are they not willing to even take the vote on the House floor to refill the unemployment trust fund, but now they're making a relatively simple issue much more complicated and complex than it needs to be. And that's what I see in this offer, is an incredibly complicated and complex solution, unnecessary solution to an issue that is fairly simple to resolve. And the Senate voted on this on, what date was it? February 14th, I believe. Strong bipartisan support, 55 to 11. The Democrats in the House are not even willing to take the vote on the bill. It's time to take the vote. Let's get this issue off the table and let's move on. Thank you, everybody.
Will you take this back to your caucus and will you come back with a counteroffer?
I honestly don't even consider this an offer. This is 2 steps backwards from where we were last week. We'll certainly discuss it. This is an issue that is very, very important to the people of Minnesota. The Unemployment Trust Fund, again, is a safety net for Minnesota workers when they get laid off. That's paid for by employers. It's an important issue that needs to get resolved. We're going to continue to work towards a solution, but today's offer from the Democrats did not move us closer to an agreement.
Will you meet again tomorrow or later this week?
We're planning to meet again tomorrow. As everyone knows, there's a deadline on reinsurance, and the conference committees that conference committee is going to meet tonight. And we'll meet again tomorrow to discuss reinsurance, UI, and any other issues that need to be discussed.
Do you have an opinion on this liquor omnibus that the House passed out of Commerce? It seems to be perhaps a deal between liquor stores.
I haven't seen it. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all again. Off to another good week, I believe. Just met with leadership, and it's all 4 corners of the leadership, which I think is a good dynamic, including more voices. The House offered up a new position from the Senate offer that we received, or that they were able to receive on Friday. It's a good move. It's in the right direction. They've added about $700 million to their offer on the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, and clarified a little of their position around the essential workers, especially the hourly wage workers, bus drivers, and some of them. So that was a good piece. We assume that the Senate will go back in good faith, take a look at that, bring something back. We started this, and I think the more pressing issue right now is the reinsurance piece. We know that we have a deadline to get CMS waiver by Friday, and I understand that they met several times over the weekend, the 2 chairs trying to work something out. Conferees will all be appointed by today, and they'll meet tonight. And we've set kind of an informal tomorrow evening. We'd like to have the report back and be able to get something so that a vote could go to the floor I think ideally Wednesday, and we'll see where that goes. And then just a bit of talk around the drought relief package, the ag package, that also addresses the current situation we're in with highly pathogenic avian influenza, which we know showed up in Minnesota last week. And we're in a much better position than we were in 2015, but there's some mechanisms in there. I know Senator Westrom has been working with the commissioner to try and do some of that leverage around some of the sentinel surveillance that we're going to need to do here to tackle that. And then I think you saw today the announcement that we've got a good, robust mail order program for long-term management of COVID, endemic-style COVID, to make sure that Minnesotans are continuing when we more than likely eventually see another surge, that we're prepared to do the things that we know are the best to be able to accurately test, continue to have boosters. We're going to get some, I think, confirmation around our little ones being able to get vaccinated, and then just adjust as the surge comes. So I think the week got off to a good start. We do need to get clarification first and foremost in some finality around the reinsurance piece to keep those rates down and then move into the next discussions on these other issues. So glad to take some questions.
Governor, you're more optimistic about reinsurance than I kind of gathered from the speaker coming out, because there are some issues between the House and the Senate on that. Do you think?
Well, yeah, I think so. And I think the issue we know about it is Minnesota's reinsurance program has been able to keep rates lower. It's very expensive, and in our opinion, administration's opinion, and I think the House's position, and I would argue probably the Senate when they look at it, it's more expensive than it needs to be, but there's an understanding that we're probably not going to reach a compromise on some of the more cost-saving methods or things that we've proposed. I think what's happening here is there are some potentially bipartisan agreements on tweaking that they're discussing. And I think the House, and we do too, views it that we should, if we have the capacity to be able to talk about cost containment, prescription drug prices, some of those at the same time. I think that's probably what the discussion is. And I think for all of us, this is the healthy part of democracy. They should be debating these. We just simply, many times, and this is a real one, we have a deadline of Friday that we have to get done. I think that's where some of the tension is, that there's more that would like to be talked about, and I think there's a bit of pressure feeling like this deadline puts a little bit of that negotiating leverage in the wrong spot, but we'll get it.
Governor, at the end of the teacher strike, it seems as though the increases that have been put in place in those contracts are going to require some additional legislative funding for education. Have either the union or the district told you that they're going to need more money?
Well, I think districts across the state have told us that. Parents have told us that. Legislators have worked on this. It's last year we started to make a bit of a catch-up on that with some historic investments. And this year we think our budget, and we've talked about it the whole time, this is one of the ways to make sure that we're fully funding education in a way, and we're doing it fairly so that we're not seeing property tax go up or the burdens be put on certain districts. So those districts have, and others have too, continued, and Education Minnesota has made it clear that fully funding education, getting rid of the cross-subsidy on special education, some of those things are top priorities. The good news is we're in a position to, I think, rebalance some of that to make sure that we're not in that position of depending on referendums in communities alone and pitting communities that don't have as large a tax base as others. So I think it's a good place. I think we'll reach some compromise on that. This is one where I feel pretty confident. We saw great collaboration with Republican Senate last year on some of the funding formulas in education where they agreed to that. And I think that will happen again.
Did you hear any movement on the drought aid issue? Those are obviously different bills coming from the House and Senate right now, but is there urgency to get something done this week?
Well, both the leadership expressed confidence. It was in it. I asked the question, how are you feeling about this? I think they said that this would be on the floor Thursday in the Senate, if I remember right, Lieutenant Governor. And there was the belief that there are some differences, but they thought they could be worked out in conference. So I'm feeling pretty good about that one, that it's moving. And again, we thought it should have been done last fall, but it does give us time to address the current situation, especially as it deals with avian influenza.
One more. There is one.
Anybody else? Want to talk about beer? There was a bill came out of the House Commerce Committee on Friday that might be something like a deal on giving more breweries the ability to sell growlers from inside, and also some packaging things.
I'm going to turn to Lieutenant Governor. She's our expert on beer with this administration. So just can't.
Oh, that's a tweet, right?
So, please.
I mean, I think if there's an agreement that's reached, we've been in a position in the state where we have been more open about some of these businesses, and I think we're just sort of meeting the moment. So I think there's just been a lot of small businesses, small breweries that have been opening. It's good for Minnesota, so if we can figure out a way to make this work, I think that's a good thing.
Thank you.
When you guys were at the brewery at Ladonia, you seemed to support If they
Yeah,
can come
I
up
think,
with a deal. you
this
should-
is one of those getting everybody on there. This is some pretty entrenched interests of folks, and I just, to be clear, our three-tier system in Minnesota works well, but I think Lieutenant Governor's brought up the point where we're seeing new ways of delivering this. Minnesota, again, it's no secret, we're still a 3-2 beer state, and we do things a little different here, but I do think there's compromises around this that everybody wins. So, but again, I would ask them, I'm glad they're multitasking. Let's do the essential workers and the UI, and then we can talk
Then we can-
growlers.
And then cheers.
And
right
then
after
cheers to that, that's right. All right, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.